Hello and welcome to Lesson 10 in the topic of resources and energy resource management. Before I give you the title for today's session, I'm just going to recap the last session in sort of an entertaining-ish way, purely because the last session was a bit of a mammoth. Okay, it should have taken you about 3 lessons to complete, and it covered quite a lot of skills, including lots of notes and some exam skills, including the dreaded 8-marker practice. So as a bit of a recap, some of the content, I just thought I'd give you some right, wrong and impossible questions. So to give you a bit of a recap on right, wrong and impossible, if you've not done them before or you can't remember, there's a question with 3 answers. One of the answers is the right answer. One of the answers is wrong, but feasible, and the other one is impossible, so it couldn't possibly be the answer. What I'd like you to work out is all 3. Now, you don't have to worry about the whole no shouting out, no hands up thing, because you're at home, you can do that all you like, you just look a bit weird. But I'd like you to be able to justify why you think the answer is. So, for example, which of the following is a renewable energy source? You've got 3 options here: fracking, millions of tons of oil equivalent, or hydroelectric power. Now, I'm hoping that you can all say straight away that hydroelectric power is the correct answer. That's the right answer because it's a renewable energy source. It's inexhaustible. It doesn't emit CO2, all that sort of stuff. Fracking is a type of energy source, but it's not renewable. So it's a plausible answer, but it's wrong. So hydroelectric power is the right answer. Fracking is the wrong answer, and the impossible answer is millions of tons of oil equivalent, because that's not a renewable energy source, or it's not even an energy source, it's just a unit of measurement for energy. So it doesn't actually make sense according to the question. So wrong, fracking; impossible, millions of tons of oil equivalent; and right, hydroelectric power. So hopefully you understand the principles by now. I've got 2 more right, wrong, impossibles just to recap your knowledge from last lesson. Okay, so here's the next one. Pause the screen, and then when you're ready, unpause it and I'll give you the answers. Okay, so this one, it was which of the following is a negative impact on the environment of fracking? So this is going straight into fracking, which you were required to look at in the sort of second session, I guess, of the last video. Fracking causes traffic congestion in the local roads where it takes place. Fracking generates methane, which is a powerful greenhouse gas. Or fracking is a potentially a very abundant source of energy for the UK. Well, so I'm looking for a negative impact on the environment. So number 1 is a negative impact. Number 2 is also a negative impact. Number 3 is a positive of fracking. So number 3 is definitely not our correct answer. So it's either wrong or impossible. But because the other 2 are both negative impacts, it's between them as to which is right and which is wrong. So you just have to work out which one of those is an environmental impact. So methane as a greenhouse gas is an environmental impact, whereas traffic congestion and local roads being a problem in terms of their getting around is a social factor, a problem, an aspect that affects people. So that's the wrong answer. So this one goes: number 1 is wrong, number 2 is right, number 3 is impossible. There we go. It's almost like I know what I'm talking about. Right, and then the last one, again, pause the screen. When you're ready, unpause it and I'll go through the answer. Oh, no, this one's already been done for you. Oh, sorry about that. So, this one, I've totally ruined it. What is the correct definition for sustainability? We love our definitions, as you know. The right answer is meeting the needs of today without harming future generations' needs. The wrong answer is the cutting back of trees at the base to encourage growth of new shoots. That is actually a definition for coppicing, which, if you've done the ecosystems topic, you'll probably know. But coppicing is sustainable. It's just not a definition of sustainability. It's just something which is sustainable. That's why it's the wrong answer. And the process of taking more fish from the sea than are being replaced each year through reproduction is actually a definition for overfishing. And overfishing is neither a definition for sustainability, nor is it at all sustainable. So that is the impossible answer. That kind of gets negatives on both sides. So, the title for today's lesson, and now we've done a bit of a recap, and this one recaps lessons way ago as well, if you've done the ecosystems topic. This is our title: Management and Sustainable Use of Energy, and that's why I wanted to get that sustainability definition into this session. So write today's title down. By the end of today's session, you should understand how different stakeholders, and you'll know what those are soon, are sustainably managing energy resources, and appreciate the different views held by stakeholders on managing and sustainable use of energy resources. So we're looking at what people are doing and what groups of people are doing to manage resources sustainably, but also what they think about sustainable management. So write the title, write the learning objectives. When you're ready, unpause the screen, and then we'll crack on with the session. So we're going to look at three main groups or stakeholder group areas, and they're all at different scales. Okay, so we're going to look at how you and I, individuals, on a local scale, how we sustainably use and manage energy. So we're going to focus on three main ways that we look at that, and how in our homes heating is managed sustainably, how our use of electricity is managed sustainably, and transport, and how we sustainably get ourselves from A to B on a local individual level. We're then going to upscale it, and we're going to start to look at, right, what do governments do? What do national governments do? So we're going to look at Woking Council. Well done to Woking for being selected. You know, you're a beacon for sustainability, apparently. And we're also going to upscale it to the UK as a whole as well. So we're going to look at kind of a more national level approach. And then finally, we're going to look at how companies, so private companies, global companies specifically, so transnational corporations, how they are sustainably managing their energy use as well. So you're going to look at all these different stakeholders. You've got you and I, locals. We've got governments, both national government and local government. We've also got how global companies are managing their use of energy. All right. So I'd use a double page in your book. I would use, spread your page headings up this way and leave enough room under each of them to make sure you're going to get sufficient notes on each of these different areas. Okay, so pause the screen while you do that. There's at least, there's more than enough information, but I want you to pick 3 or 4 points of your choice from the information I give you to go under each heading. So, for example, I'm going to show you a section that's about locals, individual people, and how they're affecting their heating. There might only be 3 or 4 bullet points, so you write them all down. But if there's like 15, because when we look at Woking in the UK, there's loads of bullet points. I don't want you to do all 15 of them. There's no way you could get that many, that much room in an exam to write down all 15, even if you had any chance of memorizing them. So I want you to pick sort of 3 that you think are the most memorable, or the ones that resonate with you the most, or that you understand well, to write those down in your notes. I don't want you to copy every single thing from the pages I show you. I'm giving you choice. All right. So pause the screen, get that all structured out ready. When you're ready, unpause the screen, and we'll start doing the info. I'll start giving you the information. Okay, so we'll start from we'll work from left to right on the structure I've given you. So one way in which we, as individuals, help reduce our heating bill and manage sustainably our heating is we install things like cavity wall insulation and loft insulation. You can see that, look, that chap up here is doing that there. We use double glazing or even triple glazing for windows. And also, we turn our thermostat down by just 1 degree Celsius. You turn it down, it will reduce your heating bill by about 10%, your usage by 10%. Okay, so these are 3 things that I'd like you to get for your notes. Because there's 3 bullet points only, then you can write all 3 of them down. And if you'd like to put another stat in there, great, because actually, as people, statistically, 15% of our carbon footprint, sorry about that, was the windows opening or closing, 15% of our carbon footprint is actually brought about because of heating alone. So this is the format that you're going to be going alongside for the rest of this particular presentation, most of it anyway. I'll present to you an information slide, and then you take the information from that and put it into your notes, please. Alright, so pause the screen till you've finished, and when you're ready, unpause the screen and I will talk about the next individual strategy. Okay, so electricity. So this should be, if you've done your table across your page in the same way that I've suggested, electricity should be the next one. And there are 4 bullet points here, some nice small ones. Pause the screen, get the information down just as before into your table, and make sure you've got good notes that you understand. When you're ready, unpause the screen and I'll do the next one. Before I do the next one, actually, I will just point out this is not the case in the UK. You're only allowed 16 solar panels. This person's got well, far more than that. So this can't be the United Kingdom. I don't know why it's limited to 16, but it is. Right, anyway, moving on. So this one is about transport. So the third little bit across, again in that right order, there are 3 bullet points here. Pretty straightforward. Have a little read of it, write them down in your own notes. When you're ready, unpause the screen and I'll give you the next section. So now we're looking at Woking Counsel, the heroes that are Woking Counsel. Now I know there's loads of information here. First thing I would say is read through it all. Don't write anything, just read through it. Then maybe just get a few of the stats down and maybe 1 or 2 of the bullet points maximum, because there is a lot here. And again, I don't see how in an exam scenario any more than 1 or 2 of these bits of specific information is going to be that useful to you. The exam board are never that specific with what they ask. This would just be about making sure you've got enough variety of exemplar material to draw from. So pause the screen, don't write all this down, it will take you far too long. Maybe read it through, summarise it, 1 or 2 bullet points only. Okay, now looking at the UK government, there is a lot more bullet points on here. Again, I don't want you to write all of them down. I would suggest 3. Pick 3 small ones, that would be sufficient. Maybe try and get something with a bit of statistics on it. So it makes sense that, exam boards love you quoting stats, a number. And so if you can, so it says, look, in December 2015, the UK was one of 195 nations to reduce or keep temperature rise below 2 degrees Celsius. That, by the way, has since changed. They've realised that 2 degrees is not enough. It needs to go down. It needs to keep it below 1.5, I think, is the current thinking, because I think 2 degrees Celsius increase is going to be pretty catastrophic. But anything where there's numbers involved is a good statistic to use. All right, so again, pause the screen, pick the ones you want to use, fill in your information for your notes, and when you're ready, unpause. Okay, another one, organisations. This is now globally speaking, because McDonald's are a transnational corporation, a TNC. McDonald's see the benefit of saving energy, because it doesn't just save them energy and save the world, it also saves them a boatload of cash. We are talking billions over the course of a few years. So here you can see some specific examples of just what McDonald's are doing to manage sustainably their energy use. And lastly, we're going to look at a sort of a continental company, Eddie Stobart. You may have seen the lorries when you've been out on a road trip anywhere. This is what Eddie Stobart are doing as a haulage company, so a company where using fossil fuels is pretty much part of their industry. This is what they are doing to try and manage their use of energy sustainably. How are they making their fossil fuels go further, last longer, do more for the amount of energy they're using? So again, write it down, make sure you've summarised it, don't write it all down, get ones with a couple of stats in, and that will complete your notes for the majority of this session. Okay, so now you've got a really good idea about all the different ways that a variety of stakeholders manage their resources sustainably, including us as individuals, national governments and global companies. We're going to start to look at people's views with regards to developing sustainable energy. So just so we've got a definition of stakeholders, so you know what I mean when I use that term, because I have used it a few times in this lesson. A stakeholder is any person that has an interest in energy and its production. So you and I are all stakeholders, not because we're that bothered about how the energy is produced, some of us might be, but we care about how much it costs us, for example, and we might look at the impacts of if we continue to develop energy unsustainably, what that might do. Particularly in East Anglia, the impacts of sea level rise for us, which is a direct consequence of not sustainably using energy, is something which will affect us because we're probably going to be swimming in a few years' time. So when we talk about views, we want to know what each different group of stakeholders thinks about different ways of developing energy, and some will think positively about it and some will feel less positively about it. So there is a handout that's got different stakeholders on it, and what I'd like you to do for each stakeholder is try and come up with reasons for and against developing sustainable energy. Now, this should be on Microsoft 365 as a handout. On the next slide, I've actually got a summary of that. So if you want to just fill it in from the next slide, feel free. So here we go, is the next slide. So this is the handout that's on Microsoft 365, and if it's not, this is something that'll take you about 30 seconds to whip up in a Word document. You've got the different stakeholders. I've picked 4 for you: governments, McDonald's, Greenpeace, and homeowners. Okay, so things like people like the UK government, companies like McDonald's, organisations, charities like Greenpeace, and people that own houses. So what arguments would these groups all have for developing sustainable energy? Okay, why would governments be happy to develop sustainable energy? Why are McDonald's happy to develop sustainable energy? Try and look back at your notes and maybe think of reasons why. Greenpeace, you might not know who they are. They're like an environmental activist group. They are people that want to look after the environment, the world first kind of thing. So what arguments have they got for sustainable energy management? Why do they want energy to be more sustainable? They're all for it, by the way. And homeowners. Why might we as homeowners, not yourselves necessarily, but your parents or whoever's at home, why might they want to be all in favour of sustainable energy management? Okay, and then if you've got some stats to back it up from either your notes already or a bit of a Google search, then please fill those in. Then, arguments against sustainable energy management. So why might governments be a bit like, I don't really fancy spending millions of pounds on developing wind? Or McDonald's, what might they be against? Or Greenpeace and homeowners. Greenpeace is going to be a bit of a hard sell. They're not going to be that against sustainable energy management unless people decide that nuclear energy is quite sustainable, which it is. Sorry, Greenpeace, because Greenpeace don't like nuclear either because of the waste it produces. So, complete this table, and if you're really struggling, wait 5 seconds. Right, here we go. You should have something along those lines. Now, I've done that bit of hard work for you if you were struggling. What I'm not prepared to do is I'm not prepared to give you the stats. You need to find them either in your notes already or do a bit of research. So where it says government's arguments for sustainable energy management, it says helps meet global energy targets. You could write keep energy increase below 1.5 degrees Celsius. Okay, creates new jobs in green energy sector. Do a bit of research to UK, how many jobs in green economy. It might say green economy is going to produce 40,000 jobs, whatever it is. Reduces reliance on energy imports. Again, who do we get our energy from? We actually rely on a lot of energy from places like Norway and Russia. So again, could you give a stat that says 30% of UK gas comes from Russia? That would be a stat to back it up. Okay, so again, you could do this with any of them. Greenpeace, one of the arguments against sustainable management is that wind turbines, which you'd think they'd be all over, disturb migration patterns of birds. And then you might say, Arctic terns numbers have declined since wind farms became a thing. Whatever you want to do, it's up to you. But try and find a specific stat. Doesn't have to be a number, can be a species or a place or factual information to back up the arguments for and the arguments against. Now, this is pretty important because I've not seen this a lot in the exam, but the idea of stakeholders is very much an Edexcel A-level type concept. They love this, the idea of different groups of people and their different views. I would see this as quite a significant question. If not an 8-marker, a significant question in an exam. So maybe a 4-marker or a 3-marker, where they're asking you to name a specific group of people or a stakeholder who might be for or against sustainable energy management. Okay, right. So I've said this is homework. You don't have to do this as homework if you don't want, but feel free to. Really, you need to know about the carbon footprint. You need to know what ecological or carbon footprint is. There's been an exam question specifically on it. So I'd like you to maybe try and look up your own ecological footprint using that little WWF World Wildlife Fund calculator. So I'd like you to try and figure out, if you do that, what is your carbon footprint in percentage? How is your carbon footprint broken down into food, home, travel? What your total annual carbon emissions are, what you could do to reduce your carbon footprint, how does your footprint compare to the UK and the world average. Now I'm going to show you mine so you can answer all these things. So if you want to have a go, this is actually quite interesting to do anyway, even if it's not got much in terms of exam academic value. It's certainly got a lot of value when it comes to making you a slightly more aware person with regards to your carbon footprint. So I'll show you my results, but if you want to do this, I would urge you just to click on the link or type in the link and do it now. And then I'll reveal my carbon footprint. Okay, so my carbon footprint is 117% of my share. What that means is that I am producing far more carbon than I should for an average person if the world is going to survive, which doesn't look great because I'm not particularly wasteful, and I drive a hybrid car, so clearly I'm amassing slightly more carbon emissions than I should by some other way. Now the 2020 target, which is this year unfortunately, or last year, is where I need to be as set by the UK government, and I can see I'm not far off. Well, I'm quite far off that, to be fair. But I haven't gone on holiday on an aeroplane for a while for COVID reasons and things like that, so that might have helped lower my carbon footprint slightly. Now my breakdown of carbon footprint is food, home, travel and stuff. Most of my carbon footprint comes from travel. Now that will have gone down because I haven't had flights gone abroad. I don't really cycle to work. I used to do it a bit, but I live quite far away and I'm a bit lazy. A lot of it comes from my home, and I do have energy saving measures in my home, but I own a bigger home than I probably need to. I'm not rich or anything, I just, have a bigger house than I need to. I like to have a room for an office and stuff like that. In terms of food, I could probably buy more seasonal food, and in terms of stuff, which makes up 10% of my carbon footprint, could I get more things second hand? And actually, since I've done this, I have bought a reconditioned iPhone as my next phone, rather than bought a brand new one. So I'm trying to do little things, little bits and bobs, just to eke down my target a little bit. Okay, my annual carbon emissions are 12 tonnes, which looks really scary when it's in a big tonnes image. And how I compare, I am actually better than the average UK person. So that's good. I take a little bit of solace from that. The fact that I'm not as bad as most of the UK. The world average, I am like more than twice as bad as the average person globally, and that accounts for people that have far less resources, maybe in a less wealthy nation with less disposable income, not going to go on holiday abroad anytime soon, that kind of thing. So I need to bring it right down, although I am slightly better than most people that I can compare myself in this country with. Right, so once you've done your carbon footprint, this is just a summary to the end of this session really. There is 4 anagrams here that I'd like you to unscramble, and once you've unscrambled them, the next challenge is, can you define them? Okay, so if you can define these, it would be useful for you to write down the definitions in your book, and if you can't, then wait for the answers, okay, because definitions are always going to be relevant when it comes to exam questioning. So pause the screen, see if you can unscramble them and then define them, and if you can't, just wait and then write them down for your notes. Okay, so the first one is sustainability, which is meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. It says video there, so don't worry about that. The next one is carbon footprint. This relates to the amount of greenhouse gases produced by a person's day-to-day life through burning fossil fuels for electricity, heating or transport and so on. It's expressed as kilograms of equivalent CO2. And remember, mine was 12 kilos. No, it wasn't 12 tonnes. Oh dear. Government, the group of people with the authority to govern or lead a country. And fossil fuels, natural fuels such as coal or gas, formed in the geological past from the remains of living organisms. There we go, some definitions for you. Now that concludes today's session, so make sure you've got these definitions written down, particularly the top 2, okay? Sustainability and carbon footprint, both the most important, I'd say, out of these two. We are nearly at the end of this topic now. We've got 2 sessions to go. Again, lots of notes being taken, lots of information being passed on. Make sure you are revisiting it, going over it, turning it into revision material, flashcards, things like that, and practicing those 8 markers where you see them appearing. All right. Thank you very much for listening. I'll see you next time for another job vlog.